So this is recorded. So hey everybody, Dr. Tam here. This is the 12 game-changing habits, the road to 100. And I want to welcome everyone who is on this call. If you are in the future watching this again, not only is this going to be recorded for all of our current patients, future patients, but of course, it'll be available on different platforms from YouTube to Facebook and the different areas as well. So the reason why we're doing this is because over the last couple of years, we've had so many patients that would ask me, hey, Dr. Tam, what can I do to better our mental health? Right? So many people that have talked to us about their nutritional health, physical health, which we are going to cover in the next 2 months. We're going to do this 3-part webinar series where in this first part, we're going to cover mental health. Second part 2, next month, we're going to cover chemical health and nutritional health. And in month 3, we're going to cover physical health and what you need to do. This is the road to 100. Some of you might have heard the blue zones. There's about 5 zones in the world that are called the blue zones, where you have a higher concentration of people living to 100 and surpasses that than any other part in the world. So before we get started, I'm going to lay out what's going to happen today. The presentation will be over the next 30 to 45 minutes. I want to really be conscious of everyone's time. If you have questions, please put them in the chat box and my assistants will shoot them over to me and we'll get them answered at the end. So without further ado, let's get started. So who am I? I'm Dr. Alex Tam, and I have a Bachelor of Science in Exercise Biology from UC Davis. I'm a doctor of chiropractic. I've been the clinic director at Absolute Integrated Physical Medicine since 2009. And since then, we have treated over 10,000 patients. I've analyzed, developed, and studied over 100,000 plus x-rays. And overall, our mission in the office is to help those with chronic pain get their life back without harmful drugs and unnecessary surgeries. And this is something that we have been working on over the last 15 years. Now, the next part is this lays out all the different parts, part 1, 2, and 3 that we're going to be doing. On the left-hand side, you will see part 1, that's mental health, right? What do you believe that defines you? We're going to talk about the circle of life, cultivating a social garden in your life. We're going to talk about the act of letting go, the connections of intimacy, why that's important, and me time as well. So prioritizing that. So let's dive in. We're going to go over each part of this, then I'll have some solutions, and then we'll go into Q&A. Now, first off, the circle of life. Why is that so important? Ever since 1979, there was a study by Berkman and Sim and also Seaman et al. In 1987 that determined those who lack social community ties were more likely to have an earlier ending in life, right? This study found that social isolation, which is really what happened if you look at the last 3-4 years since the pandemic, was not associated only with overall mortality rate increase, but due to ischemic heart disease, cancer, cerebral, vascular, and circulatory diseases. It's linked to that. And this is just the isolation of people. Now, social isolation at the bottom, you can see that it leads to poor health practices, psychological responses like depression, physiological changes, because when one thing that goes from mental to chemical to physical health as well. So it allows your body to be more susceptible to diseases. Now, those of you who are watching this, you don't have to take notes because we will put this in a PDF format and email it to everyone who is registered. And also those of you who are current and future patients, you'll have all of this in a PDF format as well. Now, continuing, I want to give you guys more studies and data because that's what it's really all about. I'm not just saying this to say this, and I want to show you where this data is coming from. In a 2002 study, having a healthy social network also means positive changes, right, to your heart, your hormone, immune function. Now, what this showed is people who have been isolated also have more susceptibility to unhealthy practices. For example, increased smoking, increased alcohol, becoming less active as well. Now, other problems include COPD, which is chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, which has to do with the lungs, right? And this leads to accelerated aging, increased cardiovascular problems, and an immune function that is impaired. Okay. And in a 2007 study, this also has been shown to increase dementia as well. And for a lot of people, there are dementia, Alzheimer medications out there, but from a vast majority of the studies, it shows that all of us will get dementia, Alzheimer's at some point in our lives. The goal is to delay dementia and Alzheimer onset until we're no longer here. So the further we can delay it, the better it's going to be. And having social activity, people around you, is one of the best ways to prevent Alzheimer's and dementia. Now, looking at why is this so important? How does it relate to stress, right? Now, we've all heard of stress. There is chronic stress and acute stress, and our bodies are made to deal with acute stress. Okay, thousands of years. Let's just say you got a human being getting chased by a saber-toothed tiger. Boom. Your body is able to ramp up your heart rate. Okay, fight or flight system. You have all the blood vessels that leads to your hands, your feet, and you're ready to take off, right? But what about chronic stress? Nowadays, we're dealing with chronic stress problems. And chronic stress leads to a rise in catecholamines and suppressor T cells in the body, which drops your immune system. Things like traffic jams, okay, work overload. You got your phone ringing all the time or notifications going off. That's a form of chronic stress that we don't think about. And having a good social system actually decreases the amount of stress that your body has overall. And it's so important as we become aging adults. Most of the patients that we treat here are in their late 40s, 50s, 60s. We have a couple patients in their late 80s, 2 of them also in their 90s. So it's so important. What I see, I practice, because you have patients that live their life very healthily. They go out, they actively seek socialization, and their demeanors are different. They're healthier, right? We have an 80-year-old patient, 87-year-old patient that I have been taking care of for the last 13 years. And because he's been so well socialized, going bowling, golf, going to games, competitions, still in his 80s, I can see how his health has developed compared to someone else who is not doing the same thing. So it's huge. Now, for some of you, what should you do? How do you surround yourself with people? How do you socialize, right? Well, I've listed out some goals, and surround yourself with people that are positive. Okay. So what are the outcomes? What are you shooting for, right? It's so important to be socially active. The action plan is spend more time with people. Go out. I even have places or in and around our office in Vacaville. I know some of you are from all over, not only the States, but all over the world. And these are some places that I challenge you to go out and seek other people, socialize. Okay. Some of the areas in our local areas in Vacaville is our Three Oaks Community Center. You got the Cypress Lakes Golf Course that I know a lot of our patients go out to. And they have socialization meetings all the time. Sometimes it has a couple cups of wine, right? Glasses of wine. Sometimes it's just you're walking off the golf course. Walk the whole course. But also Browns Valley is another great place where you can meet people, go out for nice hikes. Okay. So that's the first one. Socialization is so, so huge. Now, I would recommend that you guys watch this video on YouTube. This is the longest study on happiness. This is probably one of the longest studies, going on their 4th director, on what it takes for people to live happy and a healthy life. And the results are going to be sometimes a little shocking, for those of you who haven't seen our webinar yet. So the next thing is what else is important to your mental health? The act of letting go. Research indicates that forgiveness is tied to both mental and physical well-being. Think of how many people are not able to let go of their past, right? And sometimes it's family members, sometimes it's friends that did them wrong one way or another. And it really eats at you years and years and years down the line. Sometimes we have to forgive ourselves and forgive others as well. See, the power of letting go and moving on. Now, there are two types of forgiveness. You have a decisional forgiveness or emotional forgiveness. And the emotional ones, what we want to focus on is replacing some negative emotions with more really positive ones. And why is that important? People ask me, well, Dr. Tam, what if I can't let go? Well, if you can't let go, you got to figure out how, right? Figure out how. Because holding on a problem, holding on something that you can't forgive, ultimately is going to eat you away. Because as we talk about the mental, chemical, physical, we're not only focusing on one area. The reason why we're knocking out all three is these three are the triune of health. How you have the mental affecting the chemical, affecting the physical. It's going to affect one or another. I mean, think about how many people have gotten sick after someone has, passed away or grieving in the family, right? And all of a sudden you hear one person that they've been married for, 30, 40, 50 years. And the health of one person's fine until one person passes. And if they don't take great care of themselves, just the grieving alone shortly causes the other person to pass away as well. So it's so important. Mental health is so important. So the practice of forgiveness, reading down the third paragraph here, prevents the activation of the sympathetic nervous system. And it develops and hones in on your parasympathetic. See, your sympathetic nervous system is your fight and flight. How many of you are living in that fight and flight? See, we create it ourselves sometimes with our phones. We create it because every time that signal rings or there's a vibrate or you just look at your phone, like, oh, who's contacting me, right? That's a fight or flight system. I always recommend to all of our patients that when you are eating, you turn your phone into airplane mode. Because when you're eating, in order to digest, you need to have your parasympathetic system working. That's how you actually digest food. And if your phone is ringing off the hook while you're eating, how are you going to digest food correctly? You almost can't. People will lead to problems with stomach, ulcers, heartburn, right? And all kinds of other colon motility issues, which eventually can lead to IBS, Crohn's disease, I mean, you name it. And it's all has to do with the parasympathetic system, right? I always recommend people to go for a walk afterwards, but having sympathetic system activated, prolong of that, okay, can also lead to other problems as well. Now, why else is that so important? Because when you let go of something in your mind and you let go of something in the past, your body can also release endorphins, because you turn a negative thought into a happy thought and you're laughing and you're feeling good. You're having a joyful time with everybody else. Your body starts releasing endorphins. Endorphins is your feel-good hormone, okay, produced by the hypothalamus and pituitary glands, right? Some of you might not have heard this term since junior high or high school. But in short term, the release of endorphins can contribute to long-term effects from self-esteem to enhanced brain and cognitive function, and also a stronger immune system. Okay, so this also leads to less pain as well because you're releasing those happy hormones. All right, so endorphins are huge. Now, the next thing is this is a study in 2015 where it shows the release of serotonin. So endorphins, serotonin, they're the happy-go-lucky hormones. Serotonin regulates mood the feeling of well-being and overall happiness. Now, some of you might not know this, but serotonin, 80 to 90% of serotonin, guess where it's released? It's not released in the brain. It's released in your gut. Okay. So hear it again. 80 to 90% of this hormone, serotonin, it's actually released in the gut. How many of you are eating or drinking, having habits that are terrible to your gut, that's causing leaky gut, irritable bowel syndrome, Crohn's disease, right? If you don't have a happy gut, how can one person be in a good mood and a happy mood when all the happy hormones are actually produced in a gut, right? So not doing well, not having good hormone balance will lead to more anxiety, depression, disorders in the long run. See? So once again, you got to let mentally, it's so important because these hormones, we don't know how it affects us, but in the long run, huge, huge effects. Okay. So how do you forgive? Here's an action plan, right? The biggest thing is you got to just know that it has a positive effect on you. I'm not going to say it's easy. Forgiving is probably one of the hardest things as I talk to patients, that it eats you alive, right? It may be difficult to avoid fights with family in the future. Some of the challenges, right? Maybe you don't want to be angry and disappointed in the long run. So it really depends how everyone forgives a little differently. Everyone grieves a little differently. I would say think back to the past, right? Maybe it's family, siblings, parents who might not have treated you in the best way, one way or another, or friends or family. You just got to let go. One of my mentors, he told me, he says, you got to let go to grow, right? You got to let go to grow. If you don't let go, your body will stay in its chronic stress area. And people who are chronically stressed, you might know someone, it might be you. You will get sick more often. Okay. It's almost a guarantee. Or if you always are living in fight or flight, you will crash. You're going to be go, 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 go. And all of a sudden, boom, you crash. Okay. Because I used to be one of those people that just keeps going. Don't at the time when I'm in my 20s and 30s, I didn't have to pay that much attention to my body because I can just go forever. But then the moment it crashes, you're out for 2-3 days, right? So there's so many ways, from therapy to licensed professionals to counseling, about just letting go. Sometimes you just need a person to talk to. I find that as a doctor, and that most of the time, and if there's other healthcare professionals on here, you know that a big part of the person's well-being is breaking down that mental wall of stress that they have, that the moment they're able to let that go, oh my gosh, life-changing. Okay. So the next thing is intimacy, right? How does intimacy play a role in mental health and longevity? So increase in intimacy, it plays a huge role. Okay. It improves cardiovascular health, calorie burning. We don't have to talk about why, right? Muscle strengthening, lower blood pressure, okay? Reduce heart-related risk issues, okay? And of course, it boosts libido. So how does it do that, right? So intimacy, it triggers oxytocin and also dopamine in the body, which has an anti-inflammatory effect, and also benefits your immune function as well. That's why it's so important. You look at people that live in the blue zones who are still married. I watched a clip the other day, and it was 90-year-olds still madly in love, live together independently. And you wonder why when you do the research, okay, that intimacy has an effect on impacting memory, attention, learning abilities as well. Okay. Dopamine is a huge neurotransmitter in the brain. So when you look at why is that so important, you talk to people, and those of you who have been together, have a partner, married for years and years and years, are they still intimate? You ask them. The answer is yes. Is it as often? I don't. Everyone's different, but it still exists, right? It still exists. So what do you need to do? I don't have to touch up too much on that, but it's so important. Having a good relationship with your spouse. We have patients that are like, well, no, I don't know if I could find the same person that I've lost. And I say, I understand. That doesn't mean I'm telling you to, 60, 70 or 80 years old or whatnot to go out and party. I'm not saying just hook up with people. I'm not saying that. Don't come back and say, hey, Dr. Tam, I thought you said. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that don't give up on it, right? You don't have to give up on that. You can forgive, forget, and just keep moving forward. Let it come to you. Okay. That's why having a social life is still so important. We have a patient that's been married for decades. Okay. And has lost her husband. But over time, she's like, I just can't find someone. And I told her, I said, have you gone to like the local golf course and meet up with those guys or bowling? And she's like, I can't find nobody. I said, go find someone. Go meet someone. 2 weeks later, she comes back after I gave her some ideas. She says, I found 2 people. I said, okay, hold on now, slow down a little bit. But it's the fun in it, right? The interaction with people. That's what it comes down to. Okay. So there's a few places that we put down over here that couples can go. All right. Now, this last thing this is super, super important. This is probably by far one of the things that needs to be told more to people who have had families. And I've had to tell this to moms more than dads. I think dads do a little bit me time better than moms do. Okay. A lot of moms that come through our office, mothers or grandmothers, really takes care of the whole family before they take care of themselves. And I'm not saying dads don't or grandfathers don't, but then I see this problem exists a lot more in females than it does males. So when you're seeing this, tell this to your mom or your sister, your grandmother, to an aunt, to make sure they take better care of themselves, right? Because having me time, it's so, so important. All right. So let's go through this. What does me time actually mean? Okay. In a 2014 study that was conducted, having me time, okay, being optimistic, being positive is not only showing declines in heart disease, but declines in strokes, lung capacity, function, right? I mean, it causes all kinds of problems. When you are able to be more positive, it ultimately has a positive effect on all of this, right? Cancer, infections. Optimism overall is linked to a longer life, okay? And you have your own optimism, but then your environment as well. Why would you ever surround yourself with people who are miserable and who are negative, right? We talk about this even in our office and our patients. Our patients come to us because we have a very, very positive environment. We work on that ourselves in the office to make sure that we provide wonderful treatments to our patients. But in order to provide that, we have to be positive first, right? Now, when you look at a 2011 study, happiness in their definition means the being of satisfied with life, avoiding negative emotions, optimism, having positive emotions. Maintaining happiness in one's life may lead to better health and longevity. This was published in 2011. So make sure you take note of that. Well, how do you create not just happiness, but then what does me time really mean? You could be maybe reading more. And this is a study that came out in 2022, that when you read on a regular basis, that you immerse yourself into a book. It could be an audiobook, but you start having thoughts, and make sure you're reading books that are positive, right? Not negative books. There are books where you can read and collect data and you can learn, but read books that are more positive as well. Maybe it's a self-help book. Okay. It was found that the effect of which reading was able to affect the health of individual who heavily rely on the willingness to do so. In other words, possible that the effect of reading may not be as great if you believe that there's nothing better to do, right? So it's something that you want to do, not something that you have to do. A lot of us, when we read because we have to, it's like, oh my God, it's like we're back in school again. But think of it like this. If you change one word, and one of my mentors told me this, he says, every day, instead of waking up like you have to wake up or you have to do this, you change the have to get to. Whereas if you get to do this, it changes your whole life and how you look at things. I wake up every morning thinking, this is what I get to do, not something I have to do. It's what I get to. And that's how I wake up so excited every single morning and I'm ready to go, right? This right here is a study that was in 2021. Among the activities included physical activity, diet, social support, engagement, sense of community, spiritual, religious practice, cognitive stimulation, and hobbies. Now, what does that mean? That means that you have to continue to work on these things. See, it's that mental exercise, is learning something new, keeping your mind engaged, right? Some of you might have heard people who retire and their health starts to decline. See, retirement is something that came about in the 20s and 30s because there weren't enough jobs for the young adults coming up. And that was the first time in the life of human beings we ever thought about retirement. Some people retire and they lose their identity, right? So instead of losing your identity, I tell our patients who are about to retire, I urge them, I say, what are you about to do next? What's the next thing? You cannot sit around and do nothing. I forbid you to sit around and do nothing. They're like, what should I do? I said, find a hobby. What did you like to do? I like to do this, this, and this. Or get more involved in this, this, and this. Every single patient that we've had who has recently retired, they always tell me, I don't know how I have time for this. When I was not retired, I have more to do now than when I was working. Every single person, because the patients that we have in here are engaged, right? If they're not engaged in something, I would strum up something for them to do. Okay. Hey, let's see what you can do this weekend. What are you about to do this weekend? What did you do the past one? So for some of you who are listening to this, who are our patients, not only am I interested in what you did this weekend, part of why I asked you that is so that our patients are like family to me, right? Some of them we've taken care of for 14, 15 years. Okay. I want it to be where hopefully if I ask you what you're about to tell me over the weekend, that you will remember, but also promote you and motivate you to do something in the next few days so that some of them will say, hey, Dr. Tam, I want to go out and do something so that next week I come back, I can tell you about it, right? At the minimum, give them and get them to be motivated to do that, right? For those that are around us, are we doing that for our parents? Are we doing that for our grandparents? Are we looking out for them? Or are we just letting them waste away sometimes, right? Sitting with nothing to do, okay? I mean, here are some activities: Sudoku, crossword puzzles. At the minimum, do some of that, right? Now, keeping the mind active is huge. It is so huge. Cognitive lifestyle score. Okay, you guys can pull this up. The cognitive lifestyle score is associated with cognitive function, of course, right? But those who have higher cognitive lifestyle scores are also the ones that are more engaged. And they are more engaged with puzzles and games. Is it chess? Is it card games? With other people as well. You cannot go from one thing working that uses your mind all the time and all of a sudden do nothing at all. That's not how we age gracefully, right? So you can keep in mind, right? There are some challenges. Sometimes you play like, oh, I don't want to play childish games or whatnot. It seems like wasting time, but it keeps your mind going, right? Keeps you going. You got to have that you self time. You play with other people as well, but take care of you. See, part of having me time is not only about, I'm not telling you to be selfish. What I'm telling you to do is stop only doing things for others and do something for you, whether it's for your health, your mind, your well-being. So many people I see, we have a patient that just left the office earlier and they went to go pick up their grandkids. I said, yeah, you're going to pick up your grandkids every single day. I said, what are you doing for you during the day? What are you doing for you? You can't just run around dropping kids off and picking them back up. She's retired. I said, what are you doing for you? Think of you, right? Are you going to go read a book at Barnes Noble? You're going to massage, pedicure, manicure. You're going to go join a Tai Chi class, right? Locally, that's what we have to offer. See, do it for you. Don't always just think about what you need to do for others. Okay. So I hope this message finds you well, because at the end of the day, the reason why I do this is because I want all of our patients to have a phenomenal, phenomenal life. I want all of us to age and get to that 100 years old as well as we can. Now, I will like to, ask if you guys have any questions. We'll open it up. I see that Ian says, I find playing music instruments exciting. That's awesome, right? Can't focus on anything else while I'm playing. That's wonderful. See, hey, Ian, how are you?
I'm great. How's it going, Alex?
Oh, doing phenomenal, Ian. Thank you for being here,
Awesome.
joining us from, where are you from, Ian? New
Uh,
Zealand.
New Zealand, yes, 8:05 on Tuesday morning here.
My gosh, thank you so much for joining us. Yeah, music is wonderful. See, music activates another part of the brain that just is phenomenal for us. What kind of instrument do you play in?
Ukulele, but I'm starting to get into the keyboard as well. I just really feel it's really working my brain in a different way than anything else I do during the day. And yeah, so I played when I was 10 to about 15 years old. So I'm picking it back up, and Daniel's playing as well. So it's something great to do with my son.
Oh, there you go. There you go. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Yeah. Hey, Nate,
Awesome
how's it
info
going?
too, Alex. Really awesome info, mate.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Well, Nate, how are you?
Doing good, sir. Doing good. Thanks for having us. Good to see you, man. Very informative. Like it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah. Next month, we're going to have our chemical health. And then the month after that, it's going to be physical health. So make sure you guys stay tuned for that. And we'll be posting this on Facebook and YouTube as well. So make sure you guys share it. You guys have a great afternoon. We'll see you guys next time. Good morning to you. Have a great morning to you, Ian.
Thanks, mate. Talk to you soon. Thanks,
Take
guys.
care.
Bye.
Have a great day. Bye bye.